Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really happy to introduce you to our guest today, Ken Coscia. He is the International Training Director for all Silva Instructors for the Silva Method, and he is committed to the Silva Method and the mission of enriching the planet by empowering the individual. He has been teaching the work of Jose, Juan, and Laura Silva for more than 45 years. Welcome, Ken.
Well, thank you, Tammy. It's so good to be here with you.
I'm really excited to talk to you because this year the Silva Method is celebrating 50 years of service to humanity, which is Jose Silva's primary purpose. He wanted to be of service to humanity, and he came up with the Silva Method. So I just wanted to acknowledge that Silva Method has been around for 50 years. And I want to talk to you today about the emergence, I guess, of all of these things that people are claiming to be new. They're claiming that brain training is new, and I wanted to get your take on that. So let's go ahead and dive right into that, and let's talk a little bit about what the Silva Method is first, but then let's talk about how, hey, we've been doing this stuff for more than 50 years, and you've been training it for 45, so that means you came on board pretty early in the game.
20. At 20.
At age 20.
I was the youngest in the States, possibly the world. Now I'm the oldest. But not in age. So
give us just a brief recap so that everybody knows, the people who may not know what the Silva Method is. Let's just do a little recap of what it is.
Yeah, and before I just give the recap, I also want to acknowledge you, Tammy, because in the few years I've gotten to know you better, I want to acknowledge you. You talked about service, and I'm following you, and you're doing some very cool things for your clients, for people, helping them. And even for people like myself and fellow instructors, yes, we've been around for a long time, which is great. And yet in some ways it's challenging because we need to adapt to the time. So I'm thanking you because you are more than most people I know in our organization, the Silva Method, doing that kind of work and really helping people to get their message out more effectively, more efficiently, globally. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for acknowledging that. I really appreciate that. And of course, just to let everyone know, Ken is my instructor director, and he actually recertified me last year in the Silva Method. And saying that, I actually worked with Betty Perry, was my primary instructor, and she is in St. Pete, Florida. And she's still around and not active as an instructor, but certainly still instrumental in teaching hundreds of people about the Silva Method. So I'm really thankful. And I really have to acknowledge the Silva Method. It changed my life for the better.
Well, speaking about that, and to give this recap that you asked for, and let me just say it briefly, is when Mr. Silva first started in 1944, as some of you who know our story, you know this, many don't though, he really started with an act of love. He saw that his children in the Laredo, Texas area, which at the time was perpetuating a poverty level, were having trouble in school, trouble learning. It was very rare for young people to go into high school, let alone college. So he really started wanting to help his children be more self-sufficient. And he studied for 22 years and experimented and researched. We affectionately called them the guinea pigs, his 10 children, and then others, things like hypnosis, meditation, Eastern philosophy, what's become known as positive psychology. At that time, the brain sciences to do with biofeedback. And he was very specific, and he tested the words and how to do it. And And what basically started happening was he came up with an accelerated learning approach, which is very much a part of the Silva methodology. It's part of our technology, where we teach people how to learn faster, how to learn easier, how to absorb more effectively. And this became true and evident for his children. However, as the years went by, some of the children began to have what seemed like psychic experiences, especially in what we now know to be a meditative state, this quiet, relaxed, that we in Silva call the alpha state. And they began to guess what he was going to say. They began to anticipate his questions. And at first he was, I don't want to say spooked, but he didn't know what to think. Lucky guess. And it began to happen repeatedly, and especially while they were in this relaxed, quiet state. And that's when he made a big shift. And I think this is so relevant because the shift he made was he said, I think I'm onto something of far more value than just improving memory. And he started studying parapsychology, ESP, intuition. And by the way, folks, not the Hollywood version of ooh. In fact, being the senior guy here, it used to be looked at Silva as being woo-woo, and now neuroscience, the life sciences, parapsychology, they're basically documenting, verifying things that Jose was talking about literally 50 years ago, let alone in our whole history. And that's when he made a shift and we began to focus. So you mentioned about service. We used to be called mind control. I can still see my mother's face when I mentioned that to her. I was going to take this mind control class. She turned white as a ghost, took out rosary beads, started praying for me. And again, that's the Hollywood version. That's the media. We kind of lost that challenge with the media because Mr. Silva always meant self-control. So Tammy, you and I were kind of like the choir here together, but things are not always what they appear to be. And in my opinion, one reason why I'm here, too many people are following the status quo without asking the right questions. Too many people are taking things for granted and being misled, almost like following all the other sheep to the slaughter. And Mr. Silva's intention was to help people become more self-sufficient, to take command of their lives from the inside out, to get to the truth, to get to their authentic self, if you want to look at it in the Jungian sense, spiritually, and also to have tools to be able to ask questions, to really know if what someone is telling you, what you're reading, what you're hearing, can I really trust it? And so his global challenge was to spread this to the world and help humanity to evolve. When he was alive, he used to say, and I don't know if you remember hearing him say, welcome to the next phase of human evolution on the planet. And this remains, although Silva is a step-by-step technology for self-sufficiency, for wellness, for how to do it, for how to manifest more good in your life, how to create the life of your design. Very specific skills. In my heart, in the long run, it's more of a spiritual practice to me to help me evolve as a human being and to facilitate experiences in the Silva training to help fellow, our participants do the same, to find a little more bliss, a little bit more compassion, a little bit more joy in their lives, and to really take command of their lives.
And I think a big part of what the Silva Method does for people is it really helps you to find your purpose and to develop your, like what you said, that intuition or that knowing. And I use it in business. And a lot of people, they look at me like I'm kind of, funny because I often use the training that I received with Silva in business because I use it to tune into people and try so that I can help them. Because that's another thing that people need to understand about the Silva Method is Jose Silva made it so that it can only be used for good. A lot of times people are afraid of it. It goes back to that mind control, what it used to be called. And I explain to people over and over again, no, it's you learning to use more of your own mind for practical purposes and for learning how to trust yourself. And I think a lot of the tools that you do learn, and they're called formulas, or you can say formula or program, but really it is a step-by-step method to develop everything from learning about how to go to sleep to wake up. And sometimes you think about that and it's like, well, those are really simple, basic things that you do in your daily lives. And if you don't have that problem, obviously it's no big deal. If you don't have trouble going to sleep, because I really don't, because I hit the pillow and I'm out. But I wake up at the same time every morning because I use the Silva method to do that. But for me, when I found the Silva method was when I needed to learn. I needed something because I was stressed out at work, and what I learned to relieve the stress of going to level and just having that quiet time and learning the dynamic meditation and the visualization tools and developing those skills have really, really helped me to the point of using, for example, there are dream techniques that you actually learn, well, how to understand or how to use your dreams. And I use them for what I call lucid dreaming, where I actually practice things in my sleep. And a really good example of that is I was a news director and I had to push like 10, 15 buttons in a row out of all these buttons on a board that were like hundreds of buttons. And I had to push the exact buttons at the right time so that all of the lower third would come up on the news and the picture would change behind the anchor and all of these different things. Well, because I had the Silva method tools, I went to bed saying, okay, I'm going to learn how to push the right buttons so that tomorrow when I do this in real life, it will be as if I have done it over and over again. So that night, oh my goodness, I had the dream where I was doing the button sequence, and I must have done it 8 hours, because all I know is I remember the dream. It was so vivid and so lucid, as if I was actually doing it. And the next day, of course, I went into the studio and I pushed all the buttons as if I had done it 100 times. So that's just a really concrete example of how you can use it. And then I also use the Silva method to read people. And it is really useful when you can read somebody and know whether or not they are telling you the truth or not. And that's another tool that I learned. I mean, my life improved so much in so many levels. And even when, as an instructor, what I really love about being a Silva method instructor is that when I help people and I guide them through the meditations that we do, I always feel so good, because one of the statements is that you are a genius, and geniuses use more of their mind. And I always come out of that feeling like I am a genius and I can use more of my mind. And it's so powerful. What Jose Silva created is really powerful. And I've been teaching, I do little mini workshops, to introduce it. And people always are just blown away by the power of what they get out of even a little mini workshop of using the Silva method. But let's talk about all of the things going on. For example, John Assaraf, I'm sure you're familiar with John Assaraf and his brain training programs that he publicizes. And I look at that and I say, gee, that's a lot like the Silva method, using more of your brain. What do you think about all of these things that are going on now, where people are like acting like this is brand new stuff?
Let me say a couple of things. To go back to an earlier comment you made, when you and I first connected last year, that's what I saw in you, your eyes, your wheels turning. I mean, you're really out there innovating, working with it. And And what you were just sharing with people, they should understand. Even Silva himself said, this is not new. I mean, you could look at wisdom's teachings. There's so many different avenues, but he packaged, he organized. So now when you talk about someone like John Assaraf, he's doing brilliant stuff. He's doing great work. He's working, one of the men behind the scenes with him is Mark Robert Waldman, author of How God Changes Your Brain, who is a friend of mine, a friend of our organization. He's a neuroscience researcher. And when we look at, they're doing great stuff, I'll just say that. He is also a Silva graduate, by the way. Went through the class about 10 years ago. We've had conversations with him. And it's been my experience that people like T. Harveka, who is a Silva graduate, Louise Hay is a Silva graduate, that many of these people have commented how Silva has sparked their innovation, their creativity, and has helped them to move on. So I'll just choose to say that we're all here to make a difference and to help people. The one thing that concerns me, for you, for me, for our graduates, for people in general, is there's a lot of sensationalism, a lot of marketing razzmatazz. And quite frankly, the Silva Method is not so cool, and our marketing is not so cool when you compare to what I see out there. I think our program is outstanding. So my concern is this. The message I like to say to people is, it's not what you know. What you see happening is just regurgitating the same fundamentals with a new spin, a new title, a new name. You know, we never talked about meditation in Silva because it wasn't cool. But now there's so much research about the value, the benefits of meditation, that it's approaching becoming mainstream. So now in our classes, as you know, we talk more openly about meditation because this is what we're teaching people, not passive, but an active or dynamic form of meditation. Someone like a John Assaraf calls them inner size. Call it what you will. So here's the message. It's not what you know. It's not how much you know that will make the difference. It's what you do with what you know, integrating it. And I'm concerned for how many people are being seduced by the illusion of new, cutting edge. It's kind of, Laura Silva and I were just talking about this yesterday. It's kind of the way we're wired. We're always looking for something new and novel, something that we're not familiar with, because it gets us, queued up. It's exciting. I understand that. When it comes to spiritual development or personal growth or transformation, it takes time. It takes practice. And we could read every book, attend every seminar, call it what you will, and it will not make any difference in our lives until we actually stop, integrate it, work with it, and make it a daily practice in our lives. And I see a lot of people spending thousands and thousands of dollars traveling all over, going from one seminar to another, just hoping, waiting for that new, quick fix. And if it really existed, I'd be there. And that would be the caution. So is Silva a quick fix? No. Is Silva new? No. The one thing we do have, though, is we've been here for 50 years, all over the world, 100 nations, and our business model is different. We're not a guru-based business model. We have, like Tammy, you and I are fellow instructors. We have hundreds of instructors all over the world, not just one or two, who have these big mega events. And our classes tend to be a little more intimate so that people get our undivided attention. And people are not just and nobody pays an extra $1,000 to sit up front. Everybody is a VIP, so to speak. Everybody gets our undivided attention. And I'm really proud of that. And I feel very blessed and very fortunate that early in my life, I was a full-time student at Boston University, that I found this to be part of an original idea, an original movement when there was nobody else doing anything like this other than transcendental meditation. And here we are now, and I think that speaks volumes.
So when you said that you started out with Silva, you're 20 years old. So we can just do the math. But what was going on in your life that attracted you to the Silva Method, where, 20 years old, normally most 20-year-old guys are kind of flaky. And, I don't know, I imagine you were in college. But what was it that where you were like attracted to it? And then, of course, what made it so that you got involved to the extent where you made it your life's work?
It's an interesting question. Today, I understand better how I got here. Today, I understand what drew me. However, being fully transparent, I had just completed I was in engineering at first. I just completed 2 years, and I was a typical college grad. I was Joe Books. I did my work. In fact, now I know I was trying too hard. I was flunking out. I was on academic probation, and I was king of the partiers on the campus. But I will say I always did my work, went to the classes, and was really trying too hard. 2 years of frustrated academic probation, I went home to Brooklyn, New York from Boston. I was raised in Brooklyn. And it's kind of interesting, the synchronicity. My childhood friend, Frank, said, hey, tonight we're going to do something different. There's no magic. We were always together. He said, we're going to go to Staten Island to go to this seminar on mind control. I said, what? He said, yeah, it's fun. You're going to learn to control your mind. You're going to learn how to become a genius. You're going to learn how to improve your memory. That got me the memory. And he just was rambling. And then he told me his sister, who I admired, his older sister, who I admired, was dating, engaged to the instructor. And they needed support. They wanted people to come to fill up the room. So I said, okay, count me in. So little did I know what would happen because we arrived late. We did our thing that we typically would do. And all I'll say for the purpose of this is that I sat in that room 45 minutes late in the back, laughing, giggling. I was physically present, but I was mentally like on another planet with that. And this instructor talked for like 2 hours. And somewhere about an hour or so later, I mean, he was going on and on. Something inside, in my gut, all of a sudden said, yes. It's like I found what I was looking for, but I had no clue I was looking for anything, and even less of a clue what I found. It just, I don't have words. I'm very dominant kinesthetic. It was like a magnet drawing me. In fact, I was the last person to leave that night. They sent me to the library because I asked them a million questions. And I talked to my parents. They were I mentioned my mom turned white as a ghost. I needed the money. My father said, no effing way. I called up the instructor and he needed help in his office. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job for the summer yet. He needed help in his office. I needed money for the tuition. So we worked out a deal. That's how I got into class. And I went into class 3 days later for 4 days, went through. At first, it was frustrating. I felt nothing. I saw nothing. It was like just closing your eyes, where people around me were like, whoa, wow. And they felt tingling and they felt so calm and relaxed. Because again, I was trying too hard. Finally, things started clicking, as time went by, through the 4 days. And the first thing that happened for me was I felt at home. I felt at ease for the first time in my life. I used to have anger issues. I felt calmer, more relaxed in general. I was more patient with my family, in general. I stopped getting headaches. I used to live on Anacin for headaches. I was able to control and eliminate them without any meds. And then that September, early September, went back to Boston University, did all my studying, but I found I needed much less repetition using the 3 fingers technique, using the accelerated learning technique that we teach in day 2 of the 4 days in Silva. And my grades went from failing to a B, a solid B, 3.0. And then by the next semester, I was a full-time instructor teaching in Boston, 2 or 3 classes a month. And I was cum laude. I graduated nearly the highest honors, 3.8 cumulative average. And I was studying less. Wow, I mean, that really psyched me. And on top of that, my mom, who at first was praying for me, she saw this. About 6 months later, took an interest. I got her in the class with Bill, and she stopped having asthma attacks as a result. She stopped having her arthritis. She used to have debilitating arthritis. Her hands were like this. Most of my childhood memories of my mom was in the hospital. That really inspired me. And I started saying, whoa, what a way to make a living. And that's what kind of, if I may say, sucked me in. It just felt right. It felt fun. I was maybe going to be an engineer or an accountant. And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, what a difference, right? I mean, because you do this work too. And every step I took, I just started going to all the meetings, all the classes. I started, turning people on to it, sharing. And the more I got involved, the more I said, wow, I mean, what a way. And just like one thing led to another. And then, as I'm fully certified, early in my career, around 84, Jose himself, he became my mentor. There were a handful of people in the world, 4 or 5, who were doing graduate advanced programs. And they turned to me to join that staff because Harry McKnight, you may remember Harry, who was my mentor and my good friend, was leaving to do some other work for Silva. And at first I said, whoa, why me? And then I kind of caught up with it. But it's like every step I took, it just kind of made more sense. And then for 15 years, Laura Silva and I worked on certifying instructors, training them. And now since 2007, I share that role myself. And I haven't looked back. I mean, I can't think of more fun, more meaning, and talk about being on purpose. I mean, I found my purpose, if you will. I feel like I was born to do this work. And I think you probably feel the same way because, getting to know you, I see that same thing in you.
Well, what I know is that it was, yes, it's like I can't say if I found Silva or if Silva found me, but I just know that it was something about it that resonated with me because I needed something because I wasn't looking for religion, but I was looking for answers. And I was looking for a spiritual answer. And even though Silva has nothing to do with religion, you definitely do connect at a higher level. And it is more of a spiritual type connection that you have with it. And it's so, it's hard to describe it in just the fact that when you learn how to use it in your everyday life, you use it, it just becomes a natural part of your life. You had talked about that earlier, about how people are looking for this quick fix and they want everything now. And even with the Silva method, you go into what we call an immersion program, 4 days, when you do the whole program, but you still have to use it after the 4 days. But most people, they do feel that what you had described, that gut feeling of knowing that this is right and this is going to help you. And then over time, like the big joke, of course, is the 3-finger technique. But the big joke, of course, is finding parking spaces. But really, the 3-finger technique, and I have a funny story about me and the 3-finger technique is, okay, so I decided I would program my 3-finger technique for being more alert and awake when I was driving, because I used to commute an hour and a half each way. And sometimes I'd be driving about 11:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning, very dangerous time to be driving. I'd see all these drunk drivers weaving all over the roads. Right. So I would drive with I programmed for my 3 fingers technique so that I would be wide awake and alert and safe. Well, I thought that I had to drive with my 3 fingers together. So I would be driving with my 3 fingers around my steering wheel, at 10 and 2. And I would drive like that. And it was just last year. And I did that for 7, 8 years. And then last year I learned, no, Tammy, you don't have to keep your 3 fingers together to have it work. And I was so embarrassed because I actually thought you had to keep your 3 fingers together. But what I can honestly tell you that I always drove, and to this day, it's a habit now that I actually drive with my 3 fingers like that around the steering wheel. It's a hard habit to break, but it does work. And the learning, when I was a newspaper editor, so I actually have a couple 3 fingers stories. One is I used to cover these very complicated city council meetings. And so I would program my three fingers so that, and my goal was to be able to understand and to report in easy to understand language what went on in these meetings, and that worked. And then I also used it. What else? Oh, I got my real estate license. And I went in and I did my homework the way that you're instructed to do the programming for learning. And I programmed my three fingers technique. And the real estate test is, most people, if they pass it, with a 75, they're like woohoo and happy. And most of the time, it's like just pass the test, because my problem or my perception was that I was not good at math, but I programmed all of the formulas for all the math that I would need to know for the real estate exam. So I did the test and I pushed the submit button and it went like, phew, and it was like, oh no, I think the computer broke. It like flashed and I didn't see my score and I don't know if I passed. So I went up to the help desk and I told the man, I said, I think the computer just broke, because when I pushed submit, it just flew by. And I said, I don't know if I passed or if I failed. And I was worried, I just spent time on this real estate exam. And he said, well, just one moment. And he looked it up and he goes, oh, the reason that it went so fast is because you scored 100%.
Whoa.
And I said 100% on that, because real estate tests are not easy. So those are my three fingers techniques. Not only have I used them for parking or for protection and alertness, and for education and to remember things, but I used it very well for taking big, complicated tests. So that is just one tool that is just like so powerful and so useful. And then being positive, I think, is so huge. And one of the things that I really learned from the Silva Method was how to do mental house cleaning. And even though it's very simple, the better and better, and every day, every way I'm getting better and better. That is such a powerful daily tool that you can use. And to be a magnet for all things good, that's my personal one, that I want to be a magnet for all things good. And of course, give back to do all things good. But these are just little teeny things. The mental house cleaning is so powerful because the things that we're constantly saying to ourselves, our limiting beliefs about who we are, is very important. And I had a major breakthrough working on limiting beliefs with the Silva Method, because my limiting belief was, who would ever listen to me? Think about that. Who would ever listen to me? And when I used the Silva Method to break through that and to realize that I had very important things to say and share, like the Silva Method, for example, guess what? People listen to me. People follow me. People want to hear what I have to say. And that, even to this day, it makes me get goosebumps, because think about if I had not found the Silva Method and gotten rid of that one belief, I would not be where I am today. I would probably be still working at a newspaper somewhere, quietly leading they say, the life of quiet desperation, going in and out of work every day, doing my job. But now I'm out there, I travel. Like you travel the world. My goal, I got my passport last year because I decided, I said, with the Silva Method, I could go anywhere in the world and go to a class, but you have to have a passport. You have to be able to be ready, and you have to be, have the tools ready to go. So now I have a passport. I could go anywhere in the world now. And that's because of the Silva Method. It gave me like a a goal or a bucket list of, gee, I could go to London, I could go to France. I know people I met through the Silva Method conventions. I met lots of people from around the world, so I actually could go and say, hey, it's
Visit.
Tammy. Remember me? So it's very powerful. And
Tommy,
it's
you,
crazy powerful.
and you've touched on so many different points. Just like to add a couple of things. First of all, like you just said, people are listening because you have so much to offer. Number one, like I said earlier, you're doing such cool things. And what you just mentioned before about confidence, it's been my experience that we meet so many people, don't we, who are very skilled, maybe the best at what they do, and yet the one thing holding them back from creating the life of their design or going out on their own or taking that next bold move is a lack of confidence. And that it's like a disease and it holds us back. When you mentioned before about three fingers and this joke about parking spaces, it is kind of an inside joke. And yet, if you think about it, it's so reflective of synchronicities and everyday intuition. Because what we're really teaching people is to trust your gut, to trust your intuition. It's always speaking to us, and we need to learn how to recognize it, to pay attention. So it's a very simple kind of beginning thing, because there's a whole sense of timing in getting parking spaces, of being in the right place at the right time. And it's funny you mentioned yourself with three fingers. If you watch me in some of my videos, if you watch me when I'm in class, I don't even realize it until I look. I'm always like this with my fingers. It's just like you. It's almost like they're glued. And I reckon it when I look at it, it's, oh, geez, it's like all my motions were like this for that. The other thing, too, you mentioned before with the spiritual practice, and if I may just jump a little bit on that, because initially, the Silva program is a system of tools for health, for wellness, for managing your life, for dealing with stress. All the research now shows that what we're teaching people and all the brain scans and the work of the value, the benefit of meditation. However, remember we said Mr. Silva's real intention was to help humanity to evolve, to help people to awaken to their subjective faculties, to go beyond just the reality of five senses, logic and reason, which is important. It's necessary. But we're multidimensional. We also have these inner, some call them ESP, intuitive senses, gut feeling, whatever we want to call it, but we do have this. So a lot of what we're doing initially in day one, day two, is clearing a path to the higher self. Because speaking for myself, I used to be a professional worrier. It's why I was flunking in school. It's why I had headaches. I was CEO of the club, Warriors Anonymous. And you mentioned mental house cleaning. It's a godsend for me. I'm still part of the club, by the way, and I still have a tendency because I'm deeply concerned and I'm very passionate about things, but I'm not nearly as bad as I used to be. So how can one possibly be more compassionate, find peace and joy in their lives, harmony, if we're preoccupied with hateful thoughts, vengeful thoughts, anger, disappointments, regrets, or health problems, health challenges? Because that will dominate one's consciousness. And it's hard for people to focus when they're preoccupied with all these things, or maybe not earning enough money, not able to pay their bills. So if you look at it, a lot of what we're doing in Silva is giving people the tools, the instruction manual, the guidelines of how to harness their own, like you said, genius, your own inner genius. And what happens is, for me, I find now, I was raised a Catholic. I was raised very dogmatic as a Roman Catholic. We have a pope in our family way back, a cardinal. When I first came into Silva, my second cousin, was a missionary. He's now passed away, a Franciscan missionary in Brazil, ordained in St. Patrick's Cathedral as a bishop. And my mother was hoping I'd become a priest, which is part of initially her disappointment, until she got to understand that, no, I didn't become a priest nor a minister, but we're really doing, I feel, God's work, helping people to evolve. And for me, it's become part of my spiritual practice. I think I'm more spiritual now than when I was more dogmatically oriented back in my, the earlier part of my life with that. And so initially, we like you said, we're doing all these fun things, but it's really a stepping stone. And I say this because I've met so many people. I had the pleasure to share the stage with Deepak Chopra. I've shared the stage with Lisa Nichols and Sean Stevenson, even Wayne Dyer way back when he was a guest at our conference. And sometimes, not necessarily these people, but people like that, when I've expressed, hey, you going to take Silva with me? They'll say, oh, well, it's a great program, but I'm beyond that because I'm more interested in the spirituality. And I've laughed to myself because initially we're very mechanical, very routine, like you said, formulas, techniques. But once you integrate it, it becomes much more fluid and you just begin to live it. And I too have some funny in fact, you mentioned about me traveling lately. I just came back from Kazakhstan, 26 hours to get there, 26 hours back. I mean, whoa. And nowadays, booking your flights is really an adventure. Going through security, an adventure. And I am so appreciative of this three fingers technique of helping me to be more my timing, because I have more than a few times booked a flight and said, why did I do that? That's a longer itinerary. And then later, once you're there, something happens, and it's a good thing I didn't take the shorter itinerary or what I thought was going to be the best way to go, because something happened that would have delayed me for days, weeks, or longer because of something that happened, like an unexpected storm or delays due to things that have happened. I mean, just wow, it's just a godsend, isn't it?
It is funny. That also reminds me of last year when I went to Chicago to do the 4-day immersion program with you. My daughter and we left for the airport, and we had this little rental car and everything, which was fine. But we get to the airport, and there's the outside people, and they want like $5 to check your bags on the outside. And I was like, I don't want to spend $5. So I was going to go inside. I walked up to the door, opened it, and inside there were like hundreds and hundreds of people. There was no way that we would have been able to get through security and all those lines.
Wow.
And so I said, I'm going to spend the $5 and check my bag at the curb, because there was no line, no waiting. And that was another really good example of Silva working for me, because I had used my three fingers, and my goal, of course, was to have a smooth trip home. And again, it was that $5, thinking I was going to save money. And I opened the door and I said, it's well worth $5 to give the bags to this guy. And I just thought that was so interesting about how whenever I do Silva, everything improves.
I got to ask you a question, because it's a really cool story. Because as we all know, curbside check-in is usually always there at most airports. It's available. If I heard you correctly, though, you're in and out of airports. This time they came to you and approached you. And when you're clear about your intention, usually opportunity presents itself. Opportunities that were there all along, but we didn't pay attention to it, or we didn't notice it. So your intention was to get through. You had, limited time. You're using your three fingers technique for quick and easy check-in. And here comes the curbside check-in, the valet approaching you, hey lady, would you like to check in? And I'm wondering if that's happened to you, because I don't usually get approached for the curbside check-in unless I ask for it myself. And it sounds like that was a synchronicity.
I think so, because like I said, it was one of those split things. And, at first it was like, no. And then I was like really close to the door. I opened the door and it was like open. And then I immediately turned around and said, here,
Whoa.
This is great. But again, I think that the Silva method is one of those things that, a lot of people, they've either heard of it or not. But you mentioned earlier all of these famous people who started out with the Silva method and then they went on. For example, Dr. Wayne Dyer was a Silva grad, and of course he passed away recently, but he was the reason that I found Silva because I admired him so much. I wanted to meet him, and it happened that he was going to be in Miami at the Silva Method convention. And again, the Silva family, the Silva Method family has just been so opening that, when I arrived, they did everything in their power to help me to learn about the Silva method. And then when I expressed interest about taking the class, they opened their arms again. When I said I wanted to be an instructor, it was like, yes, we love you. Come on into the family. It was like just such a warm, inviting experience where I really felt just like you, where I found my home. And then the doors, okay, I go to a local spiritualist church. And again, because of my belief systems, and they've given me a place to teach my Silva Method classes. And I talk about the Silva Method every week. And a lot of people have been exposed to that. But what's so interesting to me is how many people who are very well-known people in the health field or in creative meditation or in motivation and transformation, all of them have their roots in, guess what? The Silva method. And then that was like they started with the Silva method, took the course, and then their lives took off, and they became like, like Dr. Wayne Dyer. He credited the Silva method with helping him to like start opening up to becoming who he was. So I'm just like always amazed at people. I met a reverend, his name is Reverend John White. He's a psychic in Lilydale, New York. And I was listening to him, and I listened to what he was talking about, and I said, that sounds like the Silva method. And so I went up to him later and I said to him, did you take the Silva method? And he said, yes, I've taken the Silva method probably 30 times over the years and really developed. And he is a really actually well-known psychic medium in Lilydale, which is a community of psychic mediums. And that's actually where he lives. And he's like the psychic medium to some very famous people. But he told me that he credited the Silva method with helping him to open up his intuition and his medical intuition, because of the case working that the Silva method does. So
it's interesting you mentioned Lilydale, because in the last class, it was here in Connecticut. I had never heard of Lilydale, believe it or not. I knew John White, and they were just talking about Lilydale. Another synchronicity.
Yeah, Lilydale is a very interesting place. Yeah. But I'm just really excited that we had a chance to just talk about our own personal experiences with the Silva method. And I just want everybody to know that if you want to know more about what Kasha is doing, you can go to the silvamethodct.com. That's his Silva Method Connecticut or CT website. And you can learn all about what he's doing with the Silva method. And by the way, his wife, Barbara, they've been married for 43 plus years or so.
Actually, been together since 72 and married 38 years.
Oh, okay. So together. Okay. But she also helps Ken with the Silva method, and they do a lot of other things also. And if you want to just go to the silvamethod.com, that's where you can find information about the Silva Method and about all of the classes going on around the world and all the instructors going around the world. So definitely look into that. And I know that, Ken, you have some courses coming up here later. Do you want to say when those are and where
Sure.
they are?
Yeah, thank you. Lots of cool things. And by the way, if you just remember Silva Method of Connecticut and you get to Chicago, Boston, or Connecticut. So we're starting up July 30th and 31st in the Chicago area. Laura Silva is presenting for the first time a brand new version of Silva Mind Body Healing 2.0. She and I both she's going to facilitate it primarily. I'm going to assist. Then later that week, Thursday, I'm doing an immersion, which is, I think it's August 18th, 19th, 20, 21. And then later in the month of August, I'll be here in Connecticut. And then in the fall, so if you go to the website, you find the schedule page. I'd also invite you, go to my website, Silva Method of Connecticut, because I've been uploading more and more videos. I have a YouTube channel. There's lots of free videos, training videos, lots of cool information, some PDFs that will help you. Same thing on Facebook if you like. So it'd be great. And if you can make it to this event in July, we're having people from all over the world coming to this.
Oh,
So it should
cool.
be really exciting.
Yeah, and definitely do go check out the videos on YouTube or Facebook, because I've been watching your trainings on YouTube and everything, and they're very good. And also, every now and then you also do telephone seminars, right?
Yes.
And those are very good. But I've been following along, and let me go see your YouTube channel here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you look up,
and
like
by
for,
the,
go
and by the way,
ahead.
I've been using three fingers also because doing videos is relatively new for me. I've been doing teleconferences on the phone for the past 4 or 5 years. So it's funny, if you look at some of the earlier, there's maybe 20 something on there. Some of the later ones have come out a lot better. Still learning, modeling that. And if you watch some of the videos, you'll see me like this a lot.
I just noticed that. Yeah, I see that one. Well, listen to some of these titles. Learn to trust and focus your intuition for higher performance, manifesting with confidence with the Silva Method, focusing intuition for breakthrough living with dynamic meditation, how to improve creative visualization, the Silva Life System and Silva Method Intuition System, key principles. So you can go to Ken's YouTube and learn so much about the current up-to-date Silva Method techniques. And I think it's really important. The beauty of the Silva Method is that it has this track record and it's the same system that's been there for 50 years. And you've got that solid information that is valid. And like Ken said earlier, the scientists and different researchers, they tried very, very hard to debunk this work back in the day, but now they're all confirming that how the brain works and how we connect to our higher power, and how powerful dynamic meditation is for health and for our mental state, and how valuable, every tool that we learn in the Silva Method is really valuable for daily living. And then as you develop and you learn to trust that intuition, do you know how much better your life is when you trust your intuition? It really makes your life a lot better when you just know that you're making these connections and that you're reading people right. It's a very valuable thing. So Ken, any last words before we go ahead and close out this interview?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you, and thank all the listeners who are paying attention. It's great. And I think the closing message I'd like to say is keep in mind, you, me, you are far more than what you appear to be. In fact, you're better. And that's our mission, is to help people realize that and to develop the tools to make manifest in the world more and more of our own creative genius.
This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.